Okay, so welcome to the S2 Portland SOP familiarization session. Um, this will be pretty similar to how the last one went if people were there. So I guess honestly, just to start it off, does anyone have any questions? I see Adrian has your hand up. So yeah, okay, I guess not. Any questions coming into this about specifically two parts of the SOP or LOA? But if you honestly have questions about really anything about the LOA/SOP, now would be a perfectly fine time to ask it as well. Okay. Seems like there aren't that many questions, so or aren't any questions, I guess. So, without further ado, I guess we can start. Okay, so um, again, as a quick introduction to this, the primary purpose of this session is to answer any questions and really just go through the new documents for this specific rating of S2. Do you,
Zoom. Can you make it bigger, please?
yes.
Big, big, big.
Second.
More. You've got tons of width. More. Thank you.
Okay. So, once again, primary purpose of this basically just to get the new documents out there and more commonplace the RTAC. Obviously, this will be recorded, so you can go back and reference it at any time. Um, Unfortunately, we haven't gotten the S1 session posted yet, but definitely working on that, and we'll announce when it's up and ready. Um, but obviously, at any point during the session, you can ask a question. Primarily, we'll be covering um, the two plans that are, I guess you could say, applicable. Maybe three, honestly, to Portland for S2s, or local controllers, which is the Boxer plan and the North-South plan. We'll talk a lot about Pearson advisory and uncontrolled field releases, initial headings, uh, the star scope and how to really set that up. DVAs at Portland, go rounds, VFRs on top, or sorry, VFR on top, special VFR. That'll be more with the Pearson advisory and the general airspace explanation. But we'll really just go through the SOP first and then the LOA. And as we reach these topics, we'll cover them. Let me know if something I say doesn't make sense. I've had a long day, so might not be the most clear or vocal. And I apologize in advance if that does happen. But so where to identify? Yes, so since it's a full TDW, which is Tower Display Workstation, um, local can radar contact via firecraft. And that is something that, as training staff, we need to start adapting to and including that more in our S2 sessions. But yeah, that's a thing that we need to add to a very long to-do list. But to answer your question, yes, you can radar contact. and I apologize if I missed your question in the LOA or PDX. I missed another question there. Cool. So we can probably start now. So I will really just kind of skip a lot of the S1 stuff. It's pretty simple, and as I kind of said before during the last one, it's really made the role of an S1 and local slash delivery slash ground procedures. It's really lessened the duties and made it pretty a lot easier, especially with Pearson Advisory being brought to the locals job and the job of an S2. So we will really barely be touching the the delivery or ground procedures, and only if necessary. But again, if you have questions about it, feel free to ask it in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll do our best to answer it. So I guess the big changes to positions, North local, South locals changed, local control 2, local control 1. Local control 1 controls the northern half of the, I guess you could say Portland Tower airspace. And they changed to 1W from what used to be, I guess, I guess it was 1N, but yeah, it's from PDX underscore N tower to PDX underscore W tower. And same thing with local control 2, it's now PDX O tower. But pretty minor changes. These are some pretty important definitions, but they're also pretty easy to read, so I don't think we'll spend time going through it. Moving on, obviously, the role of a tower controller has still mostly stayed the same. You are responsible for ATIS changes, ATIS, I guess, broadcasting, and the VATIS system and software. It is your job to put up an ATIS or delegate to a controller below you to put up an ATIS. And obviously, flight strips must be used when you're working Portland local, as well as TDLs. That was we covered that in the other session now. Again, kind of also something we covered, but it's pretty important, is the east slash west configurations for ASDEX have now changed to 1-0 left, 1-0 right, and 2-8 left, 2-8 right. So if you do see that when you're trying to set up an ASDEX, that's mainly why. So more about the equipment in general. Stars, obviously, that's probably one of the most. So in our past SOP and the last SOP that we had, which was Portland SOP 102, or SOP 102 Portland, ATCT and TRACON, it was the Pearson advisory responsibility and I guess position never existed. It was kind of absorbed by P80 and the Portland TRACON, but part of it was also taken by Portland Delivery, which gave out IFR clearances to IFR departures out of Pearson. But yeah, it's just our SOPs have been a bit out of date, so that's why. Yeah. Cool. So obviously, as I touched on a bit earlier, Portland has two tower display workstations, or TDWs. So that means Portland local is allowed to use it or use them to provide Class C service to participating aircraft. That's radar separation, basically meaning you're now able to radar contact aircraft. But there are some rules about that, which we'll touch a bit more with the star setup. Again, something else more for the star setup portion. You must display the tower runway maps. So that's 2-8 left, 2-8 right, 1-0 left, 1-0 right. As well as the Portland Class C. And those are maps that you should be that should not be in your DCB or in your, yeah, I guess in your DCB or in the maps part of the DCB. Those are video maps that should be on by default, and your DCB should only be for video maps that you can toggle on and off. So I guess an MVA would be a good example of a map that's like that. SSA hasn't really changed much, and your filter limits again hasn't changed. So pretty simple. So now we can talk a lot more about Pearson Advisory, which is probably one of the largest changes to the airspace with the new edition of these documents. Obviously, the situation before in the last SOP was really different. Portland Delivery had the responsibility of giving IFAR clearances to departures out of Pearson, and they really didn't need to talk to anyone or monitor anyone's frequency if they're in the Pearson special flight rules area. But how it's changed, or I guess it's changed a lot now, and primarily it's created the addition of the Pearson Advisory position, which is a position that really can't be controlled as a standalone tower position, but rather it's something that Portland Local, as in Portland Local 1, Local 2, must take on. Although, actually, I guess it's really only Local Control 2 if it's a single controller combined. But if it's a split position, Local Control 1 takes Pearson Advisory. So how it should be set up right now in AFV or track audio, even CRC audio, integrated audio, is you can just add the PDX V tower for chalk audio and AFV, and as long as your TX and RX on that frequency, should be good to go. And with CRC audio integrated, you can just add the Pearson Advisory position, and it'll be in your audio. Obviously, if you're communicating with the Pearson pilots, you should be using the Pearson Advisory position or like identification. And how, or like what you can really tell Pearson aircraft is a bit specific. But primarily, you're not providing separation. This is an important thing. You're not providing separation services to aircraft, or I guess Pearson aircraft within the special flight rules area. You are, or you can, however, provide point outs for aircraft that are outside the Pearson area, the special flight rules area, to aircraft that are within it, to ensure that they're aware in case they're on final. Because there's a chance that they'll get a CA or a RA, and we don't want that to really happen. But I guess again, the primary information that you want to give Pearson aircraft is to remain outside of the Class Charlie airspace and really give them direction, information about the flow of Portland traffic. So again, as the example shows, Portland landing runway is 10, Portland landing runway is 28, and remain outside of Class Charlie airspace. So an example, if November 732 Hotel Mike as calls up saying they're departing Pearson, you can give something like November 732 Hotel Mike Pearson Advisory, remain outside Portland Class Charlie airspace, Portland landing runways 10. And that's really all the information that you do need to give them. However, if in like a case-by-case basis, if obviously you have heavy aircraft that are operating near them, whether it be on the final or departure end of I guess 28 left, 28 right, or 10 right, 10 left, you're gonna have to give wake turbulence advisories as well, and that's wake turbulence advisories to the Pearson aircraft to ensure that they are not really, I guess, startled or rocked by heavies departing out of Portland or even arriving in Portland. So yeah, that's really the extent to which you should be talking to VFR aircraft, but special VFR operations are a bit different. So when you do have special VFR operations, the important thing that you want to remember, as with basically almost everything else on VATSIM, is you must coordinate basically with both Local 1, Local 2, and P80 North. So if it's in Westflow or 28s are in use, Portland, I'm sorry, North, the North sector of P80, and if it's in East Flow, 10s, the final sector of P80. And obviously, I guess tailor your request or your coordination based on how the flow is. If the 10s are in use, you're gonna have to request a sequence for the special VFR operation into their final flow. And if it's 28, the departure controller is going to have to be aware that there's the special VFR operation. So tailor that based on what the SOP says. So request a sequence for SVFR operation, or if you're controlling with, or if you're coordinating with final, and if you're coordinating with North, you can kind of include a point out to that to the controller. And SVFR clearances are pretty simple if you just follow the SOP. If it's pretty busy, we recommend giving clearance void times, as that'll really help you ensure that your pilot or the pilot is on point and really just not having multiple minute long delays, which might screw up both your departure flows or your departure streams or your arrival streams for your final controller. But the phraseology is pretty simple. Your NER 732 Otome cleared to enter the Echo surface area north of Pearson Field Airport, maintain special VFR conditions, and remain outside of Portland Class Charlie airspace. Report landing complete on this frequency. Or you can also do the other option, cleared out of the Echo surface area north of the Pearson Field Airport, maintain special VFR conditions, and remain outside Portland Class Charlie airspace. Report exiting Echo airspace on this frequency. And again, once the special VFR operations are complete, you must advise, similar to, I guess, like crossings complete, coordination. Bye.
Hey, could you and Tanner, or you and someone else, like role play a little Pearson advisory interaction, like one of you going as the point and one of you acting as Pearson advisory, so we can all see what the phraseology should look like?
Sure. Let's say Kai, you want to be a controller.
Yeah, I don't have the SOP up in front of me though.
You want to?
What's the call sign?
Yeah, I
Calling Pearson
can
advisory?
coordinate with you. I can coordinate with you if you want.
Okay. What was the call
Yeah.
sign calling Pearson advisory? Skyhawk 1234 Alpha Pearson advisory cleared out of the Echo surface area north of Pearson Field Airport. Maintain special VFR conditions and remain outside Charlie airspace. Report landing or correction. Report exiting Echo airspace on this frequency. Skyhawk 1234 Alpha, read back correct. Portland landing runways 28.
Perfect. Yeah.
P80 North Pearson advisory.
Go for P80 North.
Special VFR traffic departing Pearson to the north, November 123, or correction, Skyhawk 1234 Mike Alpha, I think it was. I don't know. I didn't write it down because I'm on my phone.
Yeah, approved name.
KJ.
Yeah, so that's basically how you do want to do it. I don't know, Kyle, you can probably better answer this question. Is there a requirement that you have to coordinate before you give the SPFR clearance, or
Yes. Yeah.
okay?
No, I definitely did that backwards because I'm on my phone and was not ready
Yeah,
to do
of course, yeah. No. Thank you. But yeah, hopefully that clears things up and a bit easier. So John has a question, is talking to me on advisory required for pilots? Yes. If there's a VFR pilot out of Pearson not talking to me, Jason to contact me, in which case the contact me would likely come from 123.75. Yeah. So this is something I think there was another discussion going on in the policy questions, I guess, the new policy questions, the PDX 7110. And from what I kind of understood is that you can't really force the pilot to switch to the Pearson advisory frequency, but you can force them to be on your frequency. Again, Kai can correct me if I'm wrong there.
Yeah, you should just provide it on whichever frequency they are, going to do it on. So if you send a contact to me and just ask them, hey, next time, just for your information, special flight rules area, contact Pearson advisory if the tower is open on 109 or point. I forget the frequency off the top of my head.
119.0.
Prior to operations, you can read about it on the chart, etc. And then you can do the Pearson operation stuff on 2377 or your local control one frequency as well, if you need to. We're not allowed to force people to use secondary frequencies, so you can use them. You can do it on either, and whichever people decide to contact you on is good. We want to use 109 point, I think it's 00 as well, just because that is what's charted on the VFR sectionals, and we want to make sure people can reliably reach us using what is charted.
Yep. Although you really won't see a difference whether they're on 19.0 or 2377, but yeah, the basic answer is just do it on both frequencies, but try to tell the pilot that the correct frequency is 119.0 for the Pearson rate. What's up, Neil?
So that back and forth was super helpful and already had me updating my cheat sheet. After the pilot reads it back, you don't tell them to hold for release if it's VFR? They just go on their own whenever the hell they want?
Yeah, so that's the thing about you can issue void times, the clearance void times, similar to an IFR release, but there's really like you're giving them, this is technically like the clearance out of the echo surface area, for example, is technically the release clearance. And that's why you can include a void time there. And Kai, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're correct. And the exiting is similar to someone going through the Seattle Bravo transition,
Right.
as in they're supposed to tell you when they're clear and now maintaining VFR again. And then you would just say, Roger, maintain VFR or something equivalent to that. The exact phraseology for ending special VFR is somewhere in the 710.
Right. And so you'd say something like clearance void if not off by and sometime in Zulu?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And the full, phraseology for that clearance is in the 701065. So
yeah.
Carson, I don't know if we were planning to go over that, but I highly recommend that everyone reads the actual the notes on the chart. And it's part of the training for Portland Tower is that people are going to go actually read the section on Pearson that's in the FAR, because it talks about all that.
Yes. So part of I guess my plan for this wasn't really to go into that. But I guess the important part here is that you can see the frequency is published on the VFR chart right there. The Pearson field part 93, contact Pearson advisory 119.0. Yeah, hopefully that clarified everything or I guess that clarified it a bit for everyone. Again, feel free if you have any questions, send them in the chat or just raise your hand. I think this is extremely helpful. Yes.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
the way I
No, I
would go
agree.
about it is remember that we're in the CTAF trial, so everyone's required to be monitoring 19.0 anyways, in theory. So if they're not, they're violating the code of conduct. But I would not send contact me's to people unless they've actually entered the SFRA. And then at that point, they should already be in the frequency, and it's just a quick call, and then you can give your advisory. But yeah, I wouldn't send contact me's just like over the river or anything. That's kind of a pilots should contact you there. They must contact you prior to entry. So if they enter, at that point, send a contact me.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you. And I hope that clarified things. And really, I guess the last big thing that changed with Pearson is that obviously delivery no longer has the responsibility for giving IFR clearances out of Pearson. The actual phraseology has really stayed the exact same between the two SOPs. So, like, as long as you pass your S1 training, you really should be able to give the clearance. But it's now the job of Pearson Advisory to give the actual IFR clearance, and basically that means Portland local has the requirement. And with that, it's also kind of taken away the responsibility of Portland Approach or the TRACON to give the releases for IFR aircraft out of Pearson. That's also the role of Pearson Advisory. And we can also do the role play thing of that to give you a better understanding of how that is. But I guess really just a basic like clearance or release clearance would be, and this is something that among TRACON controllers it's very different. You can add information or subtract information as necessary, but as a very basic level, in our 732 hotel mic release for departure, clearance void if not off in 2 minutes. Contact Portland Approach 124.35 when airborne. So obviously, it's the role of Pearson Advisory to give the IFR clearance. So once they do give a proper readback of the IFR clearance, you can give that right here, hold for release advisor ready for departure on this frequency, and then you'll kind of give the release information there. And this is historically something that has really been taught at the S3 level, and whether you're training for P80 or whether you're training for cascade approach, it's not something that we've covered at the S2 level. So if you have any questions about it, feel free really to ask us, as you really haven't gotten that much experience with it throughout your training if you're an S2. Sorry, they have to let you know they have the weather. Yes, yeah, that's true. Carson, thank you. Carson's question. They have to let you know that they have the weather if they depart or arrive Pearson Field. Yeah. Pearson doesn't have a ATIS thing. A while ago, one of our controllers figured out how to put up an ASOS. But yeah, that was definitely not legal. But yeah, it would be the Pearson, the ASOS at Pearson, you know. But yeah, Tanner, if you want to do some of the role playing for how you would give the release clearance, do you want to be the pilot or controller here? Oh, we can go for IFR clearance, honestly. Um, sorry, it was that number 1234. You're cleared to Renton via the published IFR obstacle departure procedure, the battleground VOR. Maintain 4,000. Missed your altitude, but expect your whatever 12,000 5 minutes after departure. Departure frequency 124.35. Squawk 1234. The 124.35. I don't know. Yeah, I think that's right. 124.35 for the departure frequency. And our 1234 Alpha readback is correct. Hold for release. Advise ready for departure on this frequency. And then call up with the release. Skyhawk 1234 Alpha. Pearson advisory. Release for departure. Clearance void if not off in 2 minutes. Contact Portland approach 124.35 when airborne. Yeah, so that's kind of how that would work. And again, you can really change the amount of information you give. You could go as far as to give them the current Zulu time and then tell them that the clearance is void at the Zulu time that's 2 minutes later. But my recommendation, even for when you're at the S3 and the approach level, is just skip all that, and just give them in minutes when it'll expires. That's just easier for everyone. So any questions about that? Okay, lovely. I think with Pearson IFR departures, we still need to work with the strips to try and get that done. So that might be a bit difficult, but we'll look into that. Yeah, do you ensure you're coordinating also just for IFR releases? 2 left and 2 right departures must be stopped, and that's why you need to coordinate with local 1 and local 2. I guess actually that really should just say coordinate with the local 2. But oh well. Yes, Aaron, but it's a bit like it's quite the expectation for VATSIM pilots to file it, and even in our training sessions, we rarely have it filed. It's really just asking them whether they have it on board or not, which is what the old SOP had. But yeah, it's still like you can still recommend, or we'd still recommend giving the full clearance if they have it filed, simply because kind of weird to have it filed, especially given how limited the VATSIM flight plan thing is. But yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Anyway, obviously must coordinate with North, must coordinate with Final, West and East flow, respectively. And obviously the 2 minutes of release, the within 2 minutes, that's very important. So anytime you're giving that, ensure you're providing the release time, or I guess providing the within 2 minutes. Okay. Cool. So that's the Pearson stuff. Does anybody have any questions about Pearson? Perfect. Hopefully that clarified it. Again, if it didn't, just ping us with a question. we'll be more than happy to respond or answer it. Obviously, the local sector is local 1, as it covers the north sector. Replace Portland, or replace local north. Local 2 replace local south, and local 2, weirdly, is the combined frequency. So 23.77.5 is what you're gonna log in as if you combine. We covered this during the S1 session, but we can talk about noise abatement. So in the LOA, an important distinction that kind of really carried forward and remained the same from the old SOP was the definitions of aircraft. So obviously, the last time you had JLNS, or Juliet Lima Sierra. For jets, J Lima was, or L was props and propellers, so turboprops or normal props that are less than 12,500 max takeoff weight. However, if excluding a Beechcraft King Air and S aircraft, or I guess P, depending on which version you saw, was propellers and turboprops that had the maximum takeoff weight of less than 12,500 pounds. So that's really kind of continued through with this SOP. We'll return the SOP. I'm sorry, with this set of documents. We'll return the SOP in a second. But if you look at the definitions, you see noise-sensitive aircraft, non-noise-sensitive aircraft, and then the other category is jets. Noise-sensitive aircraft are the equivalent of L aircraft, and there's a typo, but yeah, it's 12,500, not 5,000 pounds, but 12,500 pounds or greater maximum takeoff weight in turboprops or props, and that's not including Beechcraft King Airs, non-noise sensitive aircraft, less than 12,500 maximum takeoff weight, and that includes Beechcraft King Airs. And these are both only for turboprops and props. There's a completely separate category for jets. So this will really come in handy a bit later, but the river headings for Portland, it's something you may have seen in the old SOP, but it's really changed a lot from that. For the west flow, the river heading is 280, and for east flow, the heading is 080. We'll cover that a bit more later once we get to the LOA. But we can talk a bit about the diverse vector area. So a DVA, or diverse vector area, this is also a S3 topic, but it's a bit handy for Portland. It's a way of getting around vectoring aircraft below the MVA. As obviously it says, for aircraft that aren't issued a SID, they can be vectored below the MVA as long as they're basically within 12 nautical miles of Portland Airport at the departure end. And they can't be assigned an altitude below the MVA, and they must be at or above the MVA before leaving the lateral confines of the DVA, so before leaving the 12 nautical mile, I guess you'd call it radius. And the DVA obviously doesn't apply if they reach the MVA, and once they're past it, they can't descend back down, and DVA still apply. So, yeah, it's basically a way of getting vectors, or able to give vectors below the minimum vectoring altitude, which is a stars map. Okay, so this kind of goes a bit more in hand with the go-arounds. And basically, this is something that I don't know why it's really in this document, as the LOA covers it a lot more extensively. For visual approaches, you're going to give, or actually we can talk about instrument approaches first. For any time that the instrument approach the pilot is on, or the aircraft is on, has a published miss approach, you should be giving the aircraft instructions to fly the published miss. So exactly as it sounds, near 732 hotel mic, go around, near 732 hotel mic, fly the published mist. Again, the DVA is not applicable before the runway threshold, so they can't be vectored if they're below the MVA prior to the runway threshold. And in the case that they are unable to unable to accept the published mist, whether they be on a visual approach or just unable to accept it, you give the river heading, which, as we covered, 28 left is 280, 10 left, 10 right. 080, sorry, 28 left, 2 right, 280, 10 left, 10 right, 080. But you would give the river heading and the initial altitude of 3,000 for visual approach departures. I'm sorry, visual approach go arounds. So so I guess we can move on to runway 21 operations. In the case that you are running runway 21 operations, in the very rare case, you're gonna mainly see. Oh, you're honestly gonna. That's weird. Hold on. Yeah, so your all your departures are gonna be on the Portland 2 or Portland departure, and radar vectors to their common fix, and then direct their transition. But that's not really important for you. We will cover the initial heading in the LOA. Again, this is more S1, so ground delivery stuff, so we can cover that a bit late, or we covered that at the other session. Okay. Perfect. At the end, this is the available landing takeoff distances. This is pretty important as if pilots ask for it, if you're offering a shorter intersection departure, you must give the available runway distance. So this is where it is the important thing. Cool. So we can now move on to the LOA. Okay. So since we're moving on to the LOA, we can probably take like a 2-minute break here just to let people get water or snacks or anything. I'm gonna be right back. Okay. Cool. So, the LOA, I will say, has probably it has a similar amount of, I guess, pages as the SOP, but it has probably more of the information that's necessary, especially for the what am I thinking of the local position. Obviously, we can go through the definitions as it's a bit important. We covered noise sensitive and non-noise sensitive aircraft, and we covered the river heading. But again, 2A left, 2A right. River headings 280, 10 left, 10 right, 080. And honestly, we can talk about a bit more about this, and it makes a bit more sense if I pull this up. Yeah. Now let's go here. Okay, so obviously the Portland Airport last SOP. So in the past SOP, we had a kind of different setup than we did now, right? So especially with the initial headings, or I guess you could really call it the river headings. There were really two river headings or two initial headings for each flow. So 28 left had its own initial heading, which would be I guess 260 is what it used to be, and 28 right had 300, and these were the headings for the Portland 2 departure. And obviously 10 left, 120, and 10 right. I'm sorry, 10 left had 080, 10 right had 120. So the big reason for the change here, obviously now it's kind of reduced it by two headings. So each flow has a single heading, and both headings turn northbound. So obviously with the 280 heading, that's kind of in the exact direction of the runway, but it's more northbound. And then with the 080 heading, that's again more northbound. And the big reason for this is that if you think about the Portland 2 departure, and especially the aircraft that are on it, your largest volume of traffic that are, I guess, jets is northbound, right? You have Seattle, you have Anchorage, Alaska, Canada, all those people and all those aircraft are going to be flying up north. And that's why with the river heading, both of them are northbound, right? The southbound aircraft you're going to have, outside of turboprops and props, we'll talk a bit more about that in a bit. But the southbound aircraft, you're going to have maybe Eugene, Medford, I guess, the jets. But other than that, it's really just northbound aircraft, jets. So in order to make it a lot easier for your departure controller, the real world SOP has a single heading off of east flow and west flow for the Portland 2, and that's 080 and 280. And that's just to make it a bit easier, so that all northbound aircraft are already going north. And in the case that they do have a rare southbound departure, they can be turned easily. So yeah, that's a bit of context there. We're really still again in the development phase of this, so things might change, but it's pretty rare. But if you had any feedback, feel free to talk with us and let us know, because we really value your feedback. So this is, we'll talk a bit about this later, but north plan and south plan, basically, if you have a, let's call it an influx or a large amount of let's say props aircraft, so that's really noise sensitive aircraft only. So props and turboprops with the maximum takeoff weight of greater than 12,500 pounds. So really, that's a lot of that would be your Ameya or your Empire aircraft. They kind of made it so that you can optimize your ADR, and increase, I guess, how many departures you can get out at a time. And that's allowing the use of diverging headings for northbound and southbound aircraft. So if you have an influx of aircraft going northbound, you are allowed to use divergent headings to the north so that you can get out more Portland 2 aircraft in a quick manner. And if you have more aircraft going south, you can get that same procedure, I guess, but going southbound and more Portland 2 aircraft going southbound released at a faster rate. And we'll talk about this when we get to that last table in the SOP, I think the last page or two. Burner climb really just for jets, specifically military jets. So if they're kind of a non-restricted climb, I guess, similar to this. Talk about this, and this is pretty self-explanatory. And boxer aircraft, again, small cargo aircraft reference in the boxer plan. We talked a lot about this during the S1 session, but we'll cover it a bit more today. So we can really skip all of this. Sure. Yeah, all of this is really pretty self-explanatory. So we can just talk through it. So obviously aerospace is at or below 3,000 within 5 nautical miles of the Portland ATCT, also kind of called the inner ring of the class Charlie. We'll talk about the arrival and departure gates and inner facility pointouts. So that's P80 to PDX or PDX to P80 can be used via automation. So that's via the stars command. Obviously with your ATIS, any new changes, you have to send them to P80 and ensure that P80 is aware. Parachute operations, again, if there are parachute operations that are active within P80's airspace, add the advisory to the ATIS. Now, anytime, this is kind of important for S2s, is they often act as the CIC during events. So anytime that you have a runway change, you have to coordinate that with the P80 CIC. Cool. So we can talk a bit now about departures. This is where a lot of the information is. So basically, Portland, what this means, Portland releases controls for turns to P80, provided turns are not made in the direction away from the river departure corridor. So the important thing here is releasing control for turns. So again, this is really something we teach in the S3 level and maybe even C1, I guess. But what it means to the local control and the S2 controller is that P80 has control for turns, so they can give headings to aircraft that are still in your airspace. As long as they're basically what the bolded part means is as long as they're reasonable turns and not gonna totally, screw up your airspace. And that's basically only for IFR non-noise sensitive aircraft leaving 2,000 feet and for VFR and VFR on top aircraft. Yeah, this is pretty obvious and not too hard to read. It's basically there's no CFR call for release for any IFR and VFR type aircraft that are routed in accordance with the routing table, which we'll talk about. So the weather plan, basically how this affected the S1 session really was as long as the weather conditions affect the automatic release of departures, then certain has to be. So that's only if it's the weather plan, Neil. If the yeah, exactly. If weather like impacts the automatic release of departures, then the weather plan will go into effect, and these criteria, I guess, have to be met. So, tower must coordinate all departure headings, and all RNAV SID aircraft must be sent by the Portland SID. So similar to, I guess, did we cover this? I don't know. There was, I talked about this earlier. I'm blanking on exactly what it was, but basically exactly similar. It's 2-on operations, or only 2-on operations. So it's basically weather plane or only 2-on operations are pretty similar. Yeah. So for CFRs or call for releases, PAD must give you an appropriate alternate heading or issue an estimated time of delay that you can convey to pilots. And that's only if CFR is in effect during the weather plan. Sorry, no, that's not part of the weather plan. CFR is in effect if PAD decides that CFR needs to be in effect, whether it be traffic or volume or whatever it be. So I guess more of your responsibilities as the local controller here. Let's see. So this is all. Yes. Okay. So, VFR on top is something we can talk about now. As this is definitely something we really, I don't think ever talk about in S2 training. So I have the reference for it up. I can send that link in the chat. But primarily the phraseology that you need to know is obviously, so climb to and report reaching VFR on top. If not on top, at whatever altitude you give them, maintain blank altitude and advise, and give them the maintain VFR on top. We will. This is something that, again, we haven't really taught about. So if you're still kind of confused about it, definitely ask now. Yes. So, Tanner, do you want to explain VFR on top? Okay. Cool. So yeah, and we can honestly talk a bit more about VFR on top at the end of the session. It's definitely something I'm not as familiar with, and it's definitely slipped through my mind throughout my training. So
it's a typical morning.
I'm not the greatest person to ask about this, but thankfully Tanner's here. So, yes. So basically, yeah, we covered VFR on top, and again, we'll cover it again at the end of the session. We can talk a bit more about that, as it's definitely pretty important. Coordination again is pretty important. Anytime that you're really switching plans, you should talk to PDX, and especially if it's the south or the north or south plan. And when north/south plan departures are assigned the runway heading, despite the north/south plan being in effect. And with regards to the IDS, honestly, I would just ignore this simply because our IDS is not at all including anything related to this. So our IDS is woefully out of date. Anyway, so we can talk a bit more about the fan plan now. And the fan plan. Let's go back to the sky vector. So actually, this is perfect. So this kind of has this kind of has exactly what I need. So the important thing with the fan plan is the Victor 23 airway, and obviously you can see there's the initial altitude 4,000, and there's a climb out heading that's pretty important. So if they're routing west of Victor 23, so that means really the coast, maybe I guess Astoria, and I guess Astoria is way too north. You know, Tillamook, Newport, Southwest Oregon. Those airports that are on the coast. You would give them a I guess heading of 210, and if they're on Victor 23, that would be a 180. And if they're east of 123 or Victor 120, or sorry, Victor 23, my mistake, it'd be a heading of 150. So it's really 30 degrees, and I guess up and down of 180 with regards to Victor 23. But yeah, again, fan plan is really just used for the high volume of cargo, Mariflight, and Empire flights out of Portland. It's pretty rare to actually see it on the network. It's really rare. And obviously, in your Stars SSA, you must put in a fan plan, similar to how I guess Seattle has requirements for the SSA. We can really skip the arrival section. There's not that much that's important for the local controller. But so obviously, if you're at all giving control instructions that affect the sequence or separation of the final stream, you must coordinate. This is extremely important. You must coordinate with your finals controller. You have to quick look the P80 sector. Again, this is something we'll talk about during the star section, but you must quick look the P80 sector that's responsible for final. And you must advise P80 of the runway to expect when they are requesting a VOR Alpha aircraft, or when they're, like, I guess, sequencing a VOR Alpha aircraft into Portland. Or approach aircraft, I guess. NIS and the scratch pad, this is kind of important. Basically, it means that there's less than standard separation, and pilot applied visual separation is not being applied. So, yeah. So that's basically what that means. And obviously, automated scratch pads will exist at Portland, but that's again not that important for you, as that's more for the what's it called? Sorry, the P80 controller. Okay, and this is something else that's kind of new, I guess. You'll receive tracks, so handoffs from P80 for VFR aircraft that are inbound. And okay, yeah. So honestly, section 7, that's all P80 stuff, so you can skip that. But section G is go arounds, missed approaches, and vectors below the MBA. So we really covered this, but we can talk about this a bit more now. As I said, for aircraft that are on the instrument approach, always get the published. For aircraft that are not on the instrument approach, can't take a published missed. The river heading should be assigned in 3,000. And once again, you must coordinate it with either north or hood, but depending on what runway they're on. Any questions about get arounds? I know we covered it a bit earlier, but okay. Again, this is more Troutdale stuff. So we can just pick and choose the portions about Portland. So when Troutdale departures it's in the 10 flow. Portland must advise P80 of the departure sequence based on aircraft ready for imminent departure. So basically, whoever's like close to being lined up on the runway, or like I just queued up for the runway. And anytime that there's a Troutdale departure, you'll get information about that from P80, and you just need to give information about aircraft that you see might conflict with that. And I think this looks like it's repeated. I wonder if we found a mistake. I don't know. Yeah, we'll look at that though. Obviously we talked about this. Yeah, we talked about all this, but again, if you have any questions, let me know. Oh, and you must point out. Okay, actually discard. That's weird. Yeah, that's you'll receive a point out from P80 for all Pearson IFR departures. So. Yeah, okay, cool. So basically we can talk about military procedures now. The big thing is that anytime that you have a military fighter jet, basically, or fighter type departure, you need to coordinate it and kind of, and again, APREC burner climbs. So kind of like how you'd APREC an unrestricted climb, you'd have to APREC a burner climb. And if it's a formation flight, if the formation is standard or non-standard, and you just need to coordinate it, include the call sign, number of flight, etc. This is kind of where that drag or take spacing thing came in at the definitions part of the SOP. It's really for military aircraft that land, I guess, at the same time. For a fighter, you can coordinate with both. Honestly, I would coordinate with P80, but I guess since this is the P80 PDX, although I guess there's really no requirement for them to coordinate it with the other local controller, but it's still recommended. But it's I guess when you see a standalone coordinate in the P80 PDX OA, it's meant to coordinate with the other facility. And for any overhead requests or overhead arrival, you'll see ROV or LOV and in the scratch pad. And you can know that that's right overhead or left overhead. Whew, okay. Apologies, kind of rushed there through the end of that. My voice is definitely starting to die out a bit. But we are close to finishing, so let me go through the attachments. We can talk about VFR gates actually now. Obviously, this is not changed whatsoever, so this is how the tower delegated as well as approach delegated airspace kind of looks like. So that's page 9, but that's 9 for 10, 10, I guess, for 28s, and then 21. That's how the departure. I think it's. Let me scroll back up. I think the ROV is. It's the runway, not the turn. If you look at the scratchpad definitions, it's the right runway or the left runway. But yeah, good question. Anyway, so now we're at the arrival and departure gates. So these, it's pretty simple. The gates for the runways are basically here at the 5 nautical mile ring on the final course for each runway. Okay, so VFR gates. So basically, how this will kind of work. It took me a bit to figure this out as well, so ask questions if you're confused about anything. But we can move back to the sky vector. So if you look here, we can, let's start about 1-0 VFR departure. So that's kind of more important. Basically, for arrivals, you're going to see that they're always going to come from this kind of area. Otherwise, they're going to be coordinated. And that's kind of how departures will work as well. You have to let them exit the first ring of the Charlie. So I guess this inner ring of the Charlie. And once they exit this inner ring of the Charlie, then they can turn on course. But they must be told to remain clear of the port and class Charlie airspace. So however you want to do that, if you want to keep them on a straight bound, so straight out departure, or if you want to tell them, I'm not really familiar with the Portland area, but I guess people who are, you can give them VFR reporting points or just landmarks. Tell them that they can start their turn over that the landmark or whatever. But the important part is just you need to have them clear of the inner ring before they're vectored, or before they're not vectored, really, before they're allowed to turn on course. Unless you want to coordinate, of course. Same thing with 2/8. Kind of here, here, and then 1-0 is here and here. Yeah. Again, ask questions if you're unsure about it. And 2-1 departures basically need to be here. So yeah, so just ensure that they're exiting the inner ring of the Charlie on these headings, I guess. Okay, so Neil, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to zoom out a bit so that we can see this a bit better. But oh, Neil's in here anymore. Sad. Anyway, we're almost done. So yeah, if you want to, my voice is definitely starting to go These are the, yeah, this is what you're going to see in the scratch pad, basically. So, yeah, I have no clue what Idaho loading is, but anyway. And this is we can talk about the last detachment. Basically, detachment 5 is for aircraft that are southbound. I think it's basically it's for delivery on ground procedures, but so delivery procedures, if they're filed at or below 15,000 and entering this airspace, they must be at an odd altitude. So specifically, if they're entering Spectre 6 airspace. Whew, okay. Let me just double check. We did cover everything. It is getting late, and I do want to open. If anybody has questions, I'm not sure if people will, but we might honestly just make the star setup a different video because that's probably something that's important. So, yeah. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, do you wanna give a spiel about that? The 7110 or the yeah. There you go. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, I hear crickets, literally and figuratively. So, cool. Thank you, everyone who decided to attend. It's very, um, it, it's positive to us, and it's meaningful to us when we see that people attend these and people are taking information away from this. Yes, so most likely the recording for this and the recording for the S1 session will be posted at the same time. We're just waiting on Shy for the S1 one, and once we post that, we'll announce it. But yeah. Or the policy question, yeah, exactly. All right. Thank you so much to everyone who attended. Yeah, have a great night.